Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about a story of incredible courage and, honestly, devastating consequences. It's about the systematic campaign of violence targeting activists in Iraq. We're going to look at how a truly hopeful call for change was met with assassinations, abductions, and a very calculated campaign of fear.
So, let's jump right in. Not at the beginning, but right into the middle of the story. Picture this. It's May 9th. The sun's just coming up over the city of Karbala. It's quiet, but on one of these streets, a really chilling message is about to be sent.
And this quote from activist Nur al-Qaisi, man, it just perfectly captures the terror that hangs over Iraq's protest movement. It's a fear that became a brutal reality for a man named Ihab al-Wazni, who was a key protest coordinator in Karbala.
In his murder, it was so methodical, so public. He's just walking near his home, masked gunmen pull up on a motorcycle, and they open fire, killing him right there on the spot. You see, this wasn't some random act of violence. It was part of a clear and vicious pattern. And to really get why this happened, we've got to rewind a bit.
This campaign of violence, it didn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It was a direct reaction to this moment of incredible hope that just swept the entire nation back in October 2019. When a whole generation of Iraqis basically decided, you know what, we've had enough.
So hundreds of thousands of people flooded the streets in what became known as the Tishreen, or October protest movement. And what they were demanding was pretty fundamental: an end to the corruption and the foreign interference that had crippled their country. They wanted a new, civil state that could actually provide jobs and basic services for its citizens.
But this grassroots call for change, well, it was met with an immediate and very violent response. According to reports, just one day after the protests started, the Iranian General Qasem Soleimani delivered this chilling message to Iraqi security officials. And literally, right after that meeting, Iranian-backed militias, these are powerful armed groups operating with sort of informal state approval, they started deploying snipers and systematically targeting protesters.
So the situation was already deadly. But then one single event in January of 2020 comes along and just pours gasoline on the fire, turning an international conflict into a localized hunt for activists.
On January 3rd, 2020, the United States assassinated General Soleimani in a drone strike right at Baghdad's airport. For Iraq's activists, this moment changed everything. They were about to pay a heavy price for a conflict they had absolutely nothing to do with.
Now this is where it gets really telling. Just look at the data on this slide. It shows a stark, undeniable acceleration. In the 3 months before Soleimani's assassination, 5 activists were killed. Okay. In the 3 months after, that number more than doubled to 11. Unable to hit the U.S. directly, the militias, well, they turned their fury inward.
And this is exactly what activist Ziad al-Assad is talking about. Protesters were suddenly caught in a deadly crossfire. Pro-Iranian militias started pushing this narrative that the whole protest movement was actually orchestrated by the United States, which effectively painted a massive target on the back of anyone demanding reform.
So, and this is so important to understand, this wasn't just random chaos. No, this was a calculated campaign of intimidation with a very specific playbook, one designed to dismantle the entire movement from the inside out.
So how'd they do it? Well, the first step was a campaign of dehumanization. Militia-linked media channels started labeling protesters the Joker Gang. It was a term meant to cast them as foreign agents and criminals, not as patriotic citizens demanding a better future.
And this online incitement, it followed this terrifyingly predictable pattern. On platforms like Telegram, channels that were linked to the militias would publish an activist's name and photo. They'd be publicly called a joker, and once that label was attached, they were basically considered a legitimate target.
I mean, can you imagine? For activists like Qasim, seeing your face pop up on one of these channels, it was essentially a death sentence. He was forced to flee for his life, and he asks this critical question. If the government can't even stop this online stuff, how can it possibly protect its citizens from the actual militias themselves?
And this right here, it just shows you that this fight wasn't just physical. It was a battle over the very soul of Iraq. You had the militias promoting their own martyrs, like Soleimani, while at the same time vandalizing murals of protest icons like Safa al-Sarai, a young man killed by a tear gas canister who became this national symbol of the uprising. They were trying to completely monopolize what it even meant to be a patriot.
And then, of all things, a global crisis gave them the perfect cover. The COVID-19 pandemic forced activists into lockdown, trapping them in their homes. But while the streets were empty for ordinary citizens, militia members with security passes, they could move around freely, turning the city into their own private hunting ground.
So, what's the result of all this relentless pressure? It's been the systematic dismantling of a peaceful movement, a generation of people either silenced, killed, or forced to run for their lives. And the cost? It's measured in shattered lives. Just take this one number, 52. That's not some statistic from a report. That is the number of activists who had to cram into a single, privately funded safe house in Kurdistan after fleeing for their lives. And that's just one safe house. It's a snapshot of an entire movement being driven into exile.
But you know, for some, there was no escape, no safe house to run to. The story of Sajjad al-Iraqi represents the absolute darkest outcome of this crackdown, forced disappearance.
On September 19, 2020, Sajjad was abducted by armed men. For over 1,900 days, that's more than 5 years, his family has had no idea where he is, or if he's even alive. His disappearance has become a tragic symbol of the state's complete failure to protect its own people.
And trying to get justice? It's been a total nightmare. Sajjad's family has been threatened, pressured to drop the case. And while 2 people were eventually sentenced to death for his kidnapping, it was done in absentia. No one has ever actually been arrested, so you have a verdict on paper, but zero actual accountability.
And so this is the question that just echoes through Iraq's activist community, a question that symbolizes the impunity of the powerful and the profound price paid by those who dared to dream of a different future for their country. Where is Sajjad al-Iraqi?